The following is a Spirit Street production.
Brien Hanley is out today taking care of some personal business, actually giving out his brother's memorial scholarship at his high school in Louisville. So I'm Tim Fitzgerald, and I get to sit in for the Big B, and today we're going to do something totally different. We're going to look at some odds as Big 12 football nears. We're not really going to give you advice as much as give our opinions on some things, and what these odds might indicate might not fit reality. This is the Big 12 Insiders.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show, presented by Synergy Financial Partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
I'm not Brien Hanley, but that is Ryan Gilbert. Two K-State guys talking Big 12 stuff today. Ryan kind of helps us with all of our odds and betting lines and those kind of things. How would you describe yourself? You're not really an expert.
Betting analyst, maybe.
Yeah, because that's good.
Sometimes I come out on top.
Yeah, that sounds fancy without claiming too much authority in the field. You're mostly an NFL guy, but you've got a good feel for odds and how they're constructed. And we're going to go through some interesting things here today as we look at the odds from this conference, from top to bottom, who's going to win, who they think will win, and some individual breakout odds. And then we're going to make a contrast. We're going to point something out that we think these odds indicate about the Big 12 and what that means for the conference going forward, and how maybe the perception we have of the Big 12 is exactly right. Gills, I'm excited to do this. We didn't really do much planning. I did build a lot of full screens for you. So we've got lots of information here. But first of all, I'm just thrilled. I'm excited about the Big 12 season just around the corner. I mean, I feel a real buildup this season to Big 12 football.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that we're going to Vegas, right? I feel like it's hitting a little different, right? But yeah, it's exciting. It's right around the corner. We're less than 100 days, right? Or is it right at 100 days right now?
Yeah, something like that.
100.
Let me get a couple things retweeted here. So everyone, this is something I do in the background every week, but I just played us there.
Did you want me to talk longer?
Yeah, you were supposed to talk longer, but you're a troublemaker. Let's just dive in here, Gills. Let's bring up the overall Big 12 odds to win this conference. And all of our odds we're using are from FanDuel, and I downloaded their little logo. Isn't that pretty, Gills?
Yeah, good work.
It's pretty. Odds to win the Big 12, those you can just read through that, folks. But as most of us perceive, Kansas State and Utah are the favorites, the most likely to play in the Big 12 championship game. We also know that's not very likely, because in this conference there is upheaval, and we'll get into those numbers that prove that. But you can see kind of a step ladder down, Gills. There's no real sharp drop until maybe you get to the bottom three. But you've got Kansas right there, Arizona in there, and Tech, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and UCF round out the top half of this conference. Let's start here. What jumps out to you, good and bad here? Not, what number do you like, and what number do you think you would stay away from?
Well, you mentioned that noticeable jump with those bottom three teams. I think there's also a kind of a jump after West Virginia. Once you get to Colorado, that's a pretty,
that is.
You're doubling the odds to get down to Colorado from West Virginia. But generally speaking here, I know we'll talk about odds to make the playoffs with these teams a little bit later, but man, I'm not a fan of K-State or Utah just to win the Big 12. I don't think there's really much value in that bet. If you're leaning that direction, go with them to make the playoffs. K-State's at plus 290. I think Utah is going to be the exact same, right? Because they're the same odds for winning the Big 12. So if you think they can get to Arlington, man, they're going to be in the playoff, right? I mean, I'm not crazy to say the Big 12 is going to get two teams. Big 12 could get three teams, right? So
they should get two for sure.
They can get to Arlington. I mean, what's that little extra boost to 350, right? Just take the 290. We'll talk about that later. But so with these top two teams, I'd stay away from winning the Big 12. I think making the playoff is the much safer bet. So winning the Big 12, this is where you want to try to find that value, right? You're not supposed to win every single one of these bets. If you think you've got good odds, then jump on it, right? Like West Virginia at plus 1,900, Neil Brown wasn't supposed to be still coaching at West Virginia, but he's still there, right? He's done some good things. That's not a crazy story to write for them to get hot and maybe win the conference. Same thing goes for Oklahoma State. Who's going to play quarterback? I get that, but Ollie Gordon's a heck of a player, and we'll talk about Heisman odds later on, but there's value there. The further down the list you go, the better the value is, right? So I would stay away from those top two teams, to be honest, to win the Big 12. I just don't know if the value's there. I think you want to go deeper down the list to find a better value.
Yeah, I mean, your point being they both could make the playoff, but only one can win the conference.
Yep, there's one outcome here out of these 16 teams, right? That helps you. There's one. Whereas making the playoffs, there's 2 or 3.
Yeah, right. And plus, I mean, Kansas State and Utah aren't even guaranteed to be the matchup. And if they are the matchup, there's still only a 50-50 chance you're right. I would stay away from it. I'm intrigued by Kansas. And here's why. I think Kansas is both a bad bet and a great bet, depending on Jalen Daniels. If Jalen Daniels is healthy and rocking and rolling, KU could win this conference. So that's a good bet. If he's not, there's little to no chance that they're going to win. And then it's a really bad bet. It's kind of a damned if you do, lurking in the background. It all depends on Jalen Daniels. They say he's healthy, but boy, when you've got—
I've heard that before.
Yeah, if you got ongoing back problems, it's not an easy solution. So I think that is a troubling place. Look, what was Iowa State? Plus 1,000? I think that's a good value. I think what we saw last year from Iowa State was Rocco Becht is a badass. I mean, he can play. And he's that kind of warrior leader that I like on a football team. West Virginia has one. And I think Matt Campbell, and they know how to play defense. And if they start adding in some more playmakers, which they had a giant purge of recently that was hard to replace, I think I won't be surprised if they're in the game and win it. I think this could be Iowa State's year.
Yeah, but it goes back to, again, man, if you're in the game, you're probably going to be in that playoff. But once you get down the list, it does make more sense to start to just bet on them to win the Big 12. But yeah, I'm with you, man. You can write a story for all those teams up until probably West Virginia. I think once you get to Colorado, it's like, okay, especially with Colorado, man. We'll talk about them here in a sec.
Yeah,
with Sanders and the Heisman odds, but just give me a break, man. It's all hype. There's nothing there.
I would agree. I would stay away from Colorado and almost anything here. Well, let's get to the over-under win totals. The odds vary for the over and under for each team, but not much. So I just steered away from that because I think most people look at this. Would I bet the over or under, whatever the odds are? And again, these are pretty much a reflection of what we just saw and the chances to win the conference. And I think the only outlier there is West Virginia at 6.5, because West Virginia, those Mountaineers don't mess around. I mean, they've got 2 A4 conferences, and on their schedule with Penn State and Pitt, that's daunting. I admire them greatly for scheduling up. I think it's beautiful, but it has affected their win total. But maybe that makes it a good bet because I think they're capable of winning both of those games. And if they do, well, you're going to hit your number. They're going to get 7 or more. Kansas State, we know this history well, Gills, has always been the good value in this. Vegas has always kind of underestimated K-State, with the exception of a few seasons. You know, I remember when they were in 98, going back that far, I think their over-under on that team that almost would play for the national championship was 8.5. But I think now in the new Big 12 lineup, I think the odds makers are catching on, and K-State and Utah are up there at 9.5. If they both go, 3-0 in their non-conference, that means we're talking about 7-2 football teams in Big 12 play to get them over the top. Looking at the schedule, I like Utah better on that than Kansas State. But keep this in mind also, Kansas State and Arizona play a non-conference game. So if the winner of that will be a leg up on getting to their over, because I don't know how that game's going to pan out. It's early in the season. It's in Manhattan. It won't be cold. It'll be really hot, which Arizona shouldn't be bothered by. So I think that's just an interesting number. There's Iowa State at 7.5. I go over on that. What do you see here?
Yeah, a lot of these aren't necessarily a good reflection of how good or bad a team is, right? It's how do you think, how many games you think they're going to win, right? How is their schedule panning out? You look at Kansas State, you avoid Utah, you get Kansas and Arizona at home. The schedule is easier, right? So even if you think K-State's maybe not the best team, well, that schedule is easier than probably most other Big 12 teams when you look at it sort of objectively. And so, we can't go through every single one of these schools, but if you're thinking a team is going to be good or going to be bad, well, if you're thinking about the win total bet, you've got to look at the schedule, right? It's not a reflection of really how good they're going to be. It's really about the schedule. And you mentioned West Virginia. Like, do you think they're going to be good and maybe win the Big 12? Well, then just bet on them to win the Big 12 because you don't got to worry about those 2 Power 5 non-conference games that are in there. And so, how good's Tulane going to be if you're betting on K-State? These things all matter here. So it's more a reflection, just of the schedule.
Right. Yeah, I like a number a lot for a team. It's typically K-State, as I mentioned, as the over, but I don't see one that I'm not motivated on any of these. I'm not eager on any of them, but this, I'm going to bring it back up here real quick. This is the first reflection in the parity of this conference. At 16 schools, you get to nine schools are within 2 games of each other on what, Vegas thinks their win total will be. That's brutal, man. And in fact, there's 6 schools at 7.5. And according to Vegas, there will be 10 schools earning bowl bids out of this conference out of 16. And that's impressive. So, I think that's our first indication of what we have believed. And it's true that this conference is incredibly competitive, and there'll be a lot of upheaval throughout conference play, and those numbers are very volatile. I just wouldn't touch it.
It's wide open, though. We've talked about we've talked about it so much on the questions podcast and stuff. People are always asking, is the door open for K-State to be a powerhouse in college football? I mean, it's always open. It's there. But you look at the Big 12 now, it really is wide open for any team to step up and be that team to step up and kind of take charge of the conference.
Yep, I agree. Let's bring up another one here. Odds to make the college football playoff. You referenced this. These are only 4 that are listed. It's not like anyone below here has really high odds. FanDuel doesn't list people or schools beyond a certain number. And these are the only 4 reflected in their lines. Kansas State and Utah, once again. I mean, it's almost like that Spider-Man meme of them pointing at each other. These 2 teams are reflections of each other in many ways, including what Vegas thinks of them. They're both physical teams with good quarterbacks and play solid defense. They're very comparable, and they don't play each other this season. So it keeps these numbers pretty balanced between the 2 until they get to the championship, if they do. Kansas at 590 and Arizona at 650. But this gets back to what you said a little bit earlier, Gills, in that there's really, you got 2 or 3 teams that are going to get in from the Big 12, almost 2 certainly, and there's only 4 listed here. So I do see value here. I see, K-State and Utah, if they're reflections of each other and they play each other in the Big 12 championship, they're both going to probably be in the playoff depending on what their records are, and boom, they both hit. Now, plus 290 isn't a huge number, but as you know, sometimes you bet that because it's still a value at that price, at that number.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're just now tuning in, I don't have much else to add besides what I said earlier, but the odds, the value just isn't there to bet on K-State or Utah to win the Big 12. You're getting 350. Well, just take it down a little bit to 290, right? And you have all they've got to do is get to Arlington, and you're pretty much guaranteed, unless the Big 12 is just awful, which there's no.
Just turns into chaos.
Yeah, but Big 12 is going to get 2 teams, right? And it's hard to imagine a situation where a team, and it could happen. It could happen where the 3rd place team is going to hop in over that 2nd place team. It could happen, but realistically, man, I love the odds of betting on these teams to make the playoffs rather than winning the Big 12.
I would agree. I mean, that's sound advice right there. And I'm someone, if you followed my sports betting history, that needs sound advice. This conference is just going to be wide open. It's going to be chaotic, and we know that. But is this conference everything we know or expect? I would say in the second half of this show, we're going to get into that and why some of the numbers don't reflect what perception is, and why other numbers reflect exactly what we think about the Big 12, and why we think this is the most competitive conference in the nation, and there is no equal in that department, and why some of the other conferences are a lot of hype for a few schools. That's the first half of this episode of the Big 12 Insiders. Let's hear from our sponsor, Synergy Financial Partners. Great people giving great advice. I tell you what, as a guy who started up a business in 1998, I wish I'd had them because they are really good if you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, because they will set you up the right way. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the vision is to build the world's largest consumer financial education and empowerment company. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to Studio 73.
This is not Studio 73. That is Big B's old number, by the way, when he played on the offensive line at Kansas State. This is the Cats and Dogs studio. The dogs are locked away, Gills. I thought I'd be professional today and not have dogs. I'm not like petting a dog through the whole show. They'll be okay. They got treats to do it. So let's get into something else here that, look, the Heisman Trophy is a fun prop bet, basically. I think Carson Beck is the best odds. This year could be chaotic with who jumps into that. There's a couple factors here that impact the Heisman in ways that are not equitable. For example, if most schools go 8-4, their top player wouldn't have a chance at the Heisman. But in the SEC at LSU, it worked out fine. And you pretty much have to be one of those top schools or have an absolutely elite season like Washington did. And to get your, star, most likely a quarterback in contention for the Heisman Trophy. Now, we also know this about the Big 12. It is loaded at quarterback. Big B and I did a whole episode of this show on trying to sort out who is the best quarterback. And I think if you ask most experts, they're going to list probably 3 guys from the new Pac-12 schools as the top quarterbacks, skipping over Jalen Daniels and Rocco Beck, and Green at West Virginia, and the newcomer to this discussion, Avery Johnson. But if you go to Vegas, who they think are the most likely to win the award, which also indicates they'll probably be the first team quarterback, it shows something different. Now, there are a lot of players above this. I'm just putting the Big 12 in here. I think Avery, comes in at number 12 or something. He's a sophomore. He's played only a handful of games, and really that Arizona State game was, and the Texas Tech game were his only. Arizona State, North Carolina State, and Tech were the only 2 extended games for him. Really good runner, showed he could throw the ball a little bit. Gills, I almost feel like this is a bet to sucker in K-Staters because I don't see any way Avery Johnson wins this.
Well, you've got to be a flashy type of player. You've got to have that sort of it factor that Avery Johnson absolutely does have, right? Like Colin Klein back in 2012, heck of a player, but he's kind of bland, vanilla, like hard-nosed football, nothing flashy about him, so to speak. That's not a knock on him, but ultimately Johnny Manziel was a much sexier player. And so I think Avery Johnson's got that going for him, but Kansas State would have to maybe lose a game, if not go undefeated, right? For Avery Johnson to really be in here. And it's interesting. You look at Rising with Utah. We've talked about K-State and Utah being hand in hand, right? With pretty much everything on here, but their quarterback is double the odds at plus 5,000. And so maybe it is a sucker bet for K-State fans out there. Vegas has been losing its money on the win totals with K-State in the year, so maybe they're trying to make it back with one of these bets here with Johnson. But I think Daniels is another one. You talked about KU with, a high ceiling, low floor. Same thing here with Daniels. I probably would stay away from this just with his injury concerns and the injury risks there. But by all means, Daniels has a really high ceiling. He can lead them to a Big 12 title, no doubt. But even if that does happen, you've pretty much got to go undefeated and you got to be lights out, game in and game out, no slip ups when you're playing at a non, blue blood school, so to speak. And so Sanders, we touched on that earlier. Stay away from that one. Rising's interesting just because that's probably where at plus 5,000, that's probably where Avery Johnson should probably be, a little down lower than that. And then, I love Ollie Gordon here at plus 12,000. We talked about the value in some of these bets. Okay, I get it. Oklahoma State's, the odds of them going out and going undefeated, something like that's pretty low. And I also get that a running back hasn't won in 9 years, I think. Derrick Henry was the last one in 2015, the last running back to win the Heisman. But Ollie Gordon's going to be Oklahoma State. End of story. He's going to be that offense is going to go through him. And so he could just flood the stat sheet game in and game out and have insane numbers. And Oklahoma State could lose 3-4 games, and Gordon could just get every touch of every snap. Who knows what could happen? So I like the value there at plus 12,000 for Gordon.
I think that's a fascinating number. I think Ollie Gordon's really good. Maybe the world knows he doesn't have any blocking this year or whatever. There's no complementary pieces around him. I'm overall baffled by Oklahoma State's lower ranking in most of these odds. I think they're going to be solidly in the middle of the pack. And I got to tell you, when I was fixing these full screens, I thought I missed Ollie Gordon. I'd get down to about 10,000 and go back up to try to find him because I was astonished at this number. This kid is good, really good. And I would say the last two guys on this list, Travis Hunter being a two-way player for the Buffaloes at plus 6,500, maybe get around that, one or no loss season criteria for the quarterbacks that fill those top five spots. Because Travis Hunter being a two-way player, if he's a dynamic receiver and gets a bunch of interceptions, he might be going to New York. I don't think he'll win it, but he might be going to New York. I wish they had odds on being invited to New York because I find that intriguing because both of these dudes at the bottom, I think, could make that argument. And again, the numbers here for me, Gills, reflect what you were talking about being flashy. Who would probably be the four flashiest quarterbacks in this conference? Avery Johnson, Jalen Daniels, Noah Fafita, and Shedeur Sanders. Cam Rising could be the best quarterback, most effective in terms of what the team needs, leadership and just not making mistakes. But that doesn't win you the Heisman. You got to show to get the attention of the voters. And I mean, that's just the truth. If you don't grab the attention of people, they're not going to see you unless you're in one of the big two conferences. That's just the way it works. But
back to Gordon, man. What's crazy about that? Like everybody above him, Jaden Daniels got drafted. Penix is gone, right? Bo Nix. I mean, Harrison Jr. These guys are all gone. Everybody that finished above him in the voting last year in the Heisman is gone. And Ollie Gordon was 7th in the Heisman voting, so he was closer than you might think. So it's crazy. It's crazy that he's all the way down at plus 12,000. I get it. Oklahoma State's likely going to take a step back from that finish last season. I get that. But, boy, that value on Gordon, man, that's crazy.
Kudos to the team that holds a healthy Ollie Gordon under 100 yards, maybe even 125. That's how good he is. That's what I love about football, the ebbs and flows, particularly in the college game, of schematics. The Big 12 defenses were built to stop passing offenses because there was so much speed and spreading you out, and you had to win one-on-one battles. And Oklahoma State's come back with an incredible running back. We saw it also at Iowa State with Breece Hall. That really benefits them. Now, I'm going to bring this one back up, Gills, as we kind of circle back around. Now, viewers, just kind of take a look at this. Look at what these numbers are and how the middle of that conference is kind of thick. There are a couple breakoffs, as Gills pointed out. West Virginia, below West Virginia, it kind of breaks off. but there are only 3 out of the 16 schools with 5-digit odds: Arizona State, Houston, and BYU. BYU, I think, this is only a temporary position for them. I think they're going to get pretty good in the near future. Let's take a tour around some of these other conferences. This was a lot of typing. So there'll be typos because I did this. Here are the top 5 schools in the ACC. So Florida State has better odds to win the ACC than anyone in the Big 12 does, as does Clemson, just slightly. Miami, Louisville, NC State. And then the first breakoff for that conference is right there. But here's what's interesting. It's an 18-team conference. Big 12's 16. The Big 12 has 3 teams with 5-digit odds. The ACC has 8. And for me, this is confirmation that the ACC isn't a very good conference. Almost half the league has virtually no chance to win this. That drives up everyone else's win totals. That drives up everyone else's odds. And I think that's the first indication of what we always say. There's no off weeks really in the Big 12. You're typically, getting a bloody nose every week. In the ACC, almost half of your games, half the possible opponents in the league are what I would consider a game you should absolutely win.
Yeah, ACC's premier teams by the end of the season have just been bottom feeding their way up there and that's not to say they don't win some legitimate games to get there, but It's easier when you're up 41-7 in the third quarter. You can let those starters rest, and that stuff adds up over a course of a season. So yeah, Fitz, that's a good find. And ACC is not the only conference with those numbers, right?
Right. Let's bring this up. Here's the Big 10. There's their odds. Ohio State, of course, is, probably the best team along with Georgia in the country. Welcome, Oregon, to the Big 10. They offer a much needed improvement to this conference because, again, this was a really top-heavy conference, a grotesquely top-heavy conference. Because then you see the breakoff now with Penn State and then Michigan under a new coach. That might be a value bet. I don't know. Then there's a drop there. I wanted to leave that in there so you could see it. USC almost 3 times the odds of Michigan, 1 spot below. And again, an 18-team conference with 8 schools that have 5-digit odds to win their conference. Again, a very bottom-heavy conference in terms of the ability to go out there and win a bunch of games. And that's been what we've said about the Big 10. Most people have said about the Big 10 for a long time. And 2 of those 5 teams I just listed are newcomers from the Pac-12. I think Big 10 football, I'm going to be blunt, is horrendous to watch because either it's a mismatch or it is 2 bad teams playing each other.
I know you don't like to talk about OU and Texas on here, but all other things equal, if OU and Texas were still in the Big 12, do you think this would be the case where there's not as many bad teams at the bottom, so to speak?
Right. No, I don't necessarily think that. I think Texas would be easily the odds-on favorite to win. They might have a number as low as the other conference expected front runners. OU, I think, would be pretty comparable to some of those top teams in this conference. I think OU is going to have some problems in the SEC right now, unless they really have up their level of play. What OU and Texas brought to the conference was the intangible brand name. They must be good and they must be the best teams in your conference. That nonsense that so many of the nerd sports writers in our profession that grew up, watching football, not playing, and grew up just kind of fanboying over brands, and they can't get over that. They can't back up and see teams for what they actually are. They just see the shiny helmet with the sticker that makes them happy on the side. And that's been so true in this conference, particularly with Texas. OU dominated the conference for a while and earned it. But yeah, I think there would be a little bit of change in the numbers, but not that dramatic. It wouldn't change it that much, Gills.
It'd be more on the top half, top third, top 2-3 teams in anything.
Yeah. Yep. Here's the SEC. Now, if your argument is the SEC is the best conference in the country, the odds show that. Georgia and Texas are the two favorites. Again, they bring in another member of the conference, and it's up towards the top. It's true in the Big 12. It's true in the Big 10. Ole Miss, Alabama's, that's odd to see. I understand it, but it's just weird to see Alabama at that kind of number. And LSU. Okay, that's another 16-team conference like the Big 12. And let's back up and remind you, the Big 12 has 3 schools with, 5-digit odds. The SEC has 5. And so again, they kind of wander into more bottom feeders, if you want to call them that, Gills. I don't know if that's fair, but I think when you tour around the SEC, there are some games that every team's going to win. And look, that's true with a few teams in the Big 12, but most of the time you're going up against a fairly like opponent. And if you're playing on their home field, it's a big deal. And honestly, playing on a lot of home fields in other conferences, it isn't a big deal. It's not that difficult. It's not that disruptive. In the Big 12 it is, and I think the newcomers are going to find that.
Yeah, we've grown used to it just covering Kansas State. Chris Kleiman's always talking about looking forward to a hostile environment if they get the win. Proud of the guys for winning in a tough place to play. Like, we get used to that and we hear that, but it's true, right? You don't get that in top to bottom in most of these other conferences. And KU is a great example of, now that they're good and consistently good over the last couple of years, right? Like, there's no more like Vanderbilt in the SEC. It's just W on the win column. You look at that at the beginning of the year. You don't get that in the Big 12. I mean, sure, BYU or Houston. I mean, sure, but I think those teams are more respectable than Vanderbilt or Rutgers or whoever else they may be.
Let's get to a couple comments real quick. Robert has this. What's the best way to stream the Big 12? If you're a newcomer to the Big 12, you better get ESPN Plus. I didn't even mean to do that. I brought it down. And because a lot of games are going to be on there. Why is the Big 12 going to Friday night? Why is the Big 12 kind of jumping through some hoops? Because there's only so many time slots available to these networks. And the 2 main networks that cover college football, and ESPN and Fox, have invested a lot of money in their conferences, the SEC and Big 10, and you better believe they're going to give them the biggest stage. So you're going to see some games on ESPN Plus, which is unfortunate. I'm a YouTube TV guy. It gets all the other channels you're going to need for your sports viewing at the college level. And, I just think with those 2, you're going to get covered. What you just listen to the radio, because you're kind of an old man in young man's body. Right? This is maybe the best comment ever put into our chat. Thanks, Douglas. Thank you. I don't know how you found that out. That's just unfortunate.
I told him.
Damn it. I was trying to keep that secret. Well, that's the second half. We'll be back with a quick wrap up of this show and talk a little bit more about Big 12 football. And I'm going to ask Gills about going to Vegas. Because I'm going to take him to Vegas, and I will see him when it's time to work. When it's not time to work, he'll be somewhere I'm not, and that's a poker room. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the mission is to change the way Americans plan for their financial future. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to Studio 73.
Big B is off today. I'm Fitz from the Cats and Dogs studio. That's Ryan Gilbert from his hideout studio at the edge of Aggieville. And if you're a newcomer to this conference, when you come to Kansas State, you're going to love Aggieville. When you're in Manhattan, Aggieville is wonderful about twice a year. Well, there's a certain restaurant that Gills still works at called Taco something, and it's based on wrestling theme. You got to go to that place. That place.
Fitz's picture is framed with, among others, on one of the walls.
It's so funny. People are like, that's you? Yes, there's a number of, from the year they opened, a number of people had their pictures put up on the wall in luchador masks, and I am up there. I'm up there. It's hard to recognize. My
I
colors.
remember you were there last year. Was UCF was in town, right? And you were just shooting it up with guys sitting next to you. They're awesome, and it's just loot. Not to mention names of restaurants, but Aggieville is definitely the place to be if you're coming in from out of town for a K-State game.
Yeah. And I don't know what you experienced in the Pac-12 newcomers, but touring around this conference is going to be a blast. You're going to go to college towns that rock. If you're going to road games to sightsee and enjoy big city life, which was pretty common in the Pac-12, you're going to hate it. But I'm telling you what, when you walk around the tailgates in Morgantown, be careful. You might catch fire from drinking too much moonshine. This is a good rule of thumb. You don't want to overindulge in the moonshine before the kickoff of the game. Stillwater's a blast. Ames is a blast. You can go on and on with it. It's just look, Lawrence is now fun. They're going to have a mostly new stadium. So, and of course, we're real biased to Aggieville and Kansas State. But you're not going to go to many big cities. You've got Orlando and Cincinnati and now Phoenix and Salt Lake. But look, it's college towns. It's fun. But Gills, we get to go to Vegas. Big 12 Media Days is creeping up very quickly. About 6 weeks away now. And I'm really going to be interested to see how they stage this. It's 16 schools in 2 days. It was kind of head rattling at 12 schools. And then last year was 14 schools and it got worse, and now 16. I think everyone that's trying to do general Big 12 coverage is going to be running around like an idiot. I do that everywhere. I don't really run around anymore, but the idiot part I feel. But this is going to be just chaos, and we're going to try to manage it from coverage for both GoPowercat and this channel, Big 12 Insiders.
All right. Yeah, we'll see what they do. But have you been out to Legion Stadium? Have you been in there?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
You have?
Yes, I was there last year for a Steelers game. But it's a neat place, yeah. And I'm excited to walk around with you and wait up on you while you stop for gasps of breath and back pains, knee aches, whatever it may be. But I'll be there with you. I'll wait up on you.
We started basketball season together in Vegas because Kansas State played the USC. And Ryan Gilbert, if you don't know, I have stage 4 cancer, and I'm on meds every day that just zap me of energy. And because of that, I can't really exercise very much. So now I don't have much lung capacity. He about killed me trying to get me to walk to the basketball arena. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty, but we are staying at the Bellagio, so we have to class it up a little bit, Gilbert. We can't walk around in our underwear like we did last time.
Don't tell anybody about that. Don't tell Douglas.
That's my bad. I didn't mean to share that with anyone. Hey, everyone, I appreciate it so much. Make sure you're subscribing to this channel. Please do that. We got to get over 1,000 to make this channel more tangible, and honestly, maybe to get those credentials. We are kicking around having a subscribe-a-thon, subathon, if we have to get over 1,000 before then. We don't want to stay up late. Again, I'm not cut out for that. But please subscribe, hit the thumbs up if you like it. And after this post, it'll be both at the GoPowercat channel and the Big 12 Insiders channel. Leave those comments. We're really trying to build up the show. Big B, Brien Hanley, does a wonderful job hosting, and he will be back tomorrow with me, which I assume will be another Ask Big B day. And we'll take your questions as we talk Big 12 sports every day we broadcast on this channel. It's the kind of coverage you as a Big 12 fan deserve. Thanks for watching.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.